1.
Come on, what's up, bro?
James chapter 1. I was praying about, as we all should, what to preach this weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of what we call reheating messages, right? Which is something you've already preached, and you just kind of like walk over it, and okay, I think that'll do. You know what I mean? I didn't want to do that, but every time I sat down to start writing something, I kept going back to the same sermon that I had preached for our super region, which is Contra Costa, Oakland, and our Hayward region. So basically, you got the East Bay, all on the east side of the Bay Area. Then we've got different. So we broke it into super regions, and we're the East Bay super region. And I preached them a message called "Easy Doesn't." Easy doesn't, and that's the title of the message. God just kept putting this on my heart. I was talking with Mike earlier in the week, and I was trying to get an idea. Hey, I want to fight through. If it's an issue of just, I'm not trying to give up, but God put this on my heart. He's like, God put it on your heart, and I ain't saying anything about it. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay. If you want, go ahead and James chapter 1. If you got a little bookmark or whatever, some of you use your phones, that's awesome. We're going to be all over the place, but that will be our home base for our sermon here. I have been a disciple for 24 years on September 11th.
Wow.
Whoa. Now, September 11th, it was 99. It wasn't 2001. And so I remember where I was, and we could all talk about that. I'm sure we all remember where we were. Well, except for them, they weren't even born. But the rest of us were born, and we remember where we were on that. But so it's kind of a bittersweet spiritual birthday for me. But I was thinking about it, and I look back at the last 24 years, and sometimes, I don't know if you have ever felt this way, but you can get this idea that, man, I thought it was going to be a little easier.
Yes.
I thought life was going to be a little easier on some level. Now, the beauty is that God has not given me a very good memory, so most of it I have forgotten. But I think all of us can attest on one level or another, and I haven't lived as long as some of you, and I've lived a lot longer than others of you, but one way or the other, I think we can all attest that on some level, life just is hard.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first became a disciple, I thought, man, I now have Jesus on my side. I'm not fighting against him, you know what I mean? I've got people in my life that love me, that want to help my character. I have a full head of hair, baby. I have sisters that actually want to go on dates with me. I just go to world to save my life. Life was good. And then it got hard. In Revelation 21:4 says that there will be a time when there is no more death, there's no more mourning, there's no more crying. But here's the reality. The truth is that we can think, even as disciples, that life should be a lot easier. That on some level, it shouldn't be this hard. But the truth is that when we're surprised, we don't need to go any further than the scriptures. Acts 14, verse 22, write these down. Acts 14:22 says, we must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God. Now, at first read, you can read that and go, man, this is awesome because I'm in the kingdom of God, so there should be no more hardship, right? I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Come on, man.
Because Jesus says in Matthew 6:34, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Last I checked, trouble is not easy.
Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't be trouble.
Yes.
John 14:1, Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. John 14:27, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. John 16:33, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you might have trouble if you're dumb and don't make good decisions. But no, is that what it says? No. I think we don't even have the Bible open and we know that's something Jesus would say. In this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Finally, Peter says this, and I love Peter. Peter speaks my language. Peter, impetuous Peter, he just speaks my language. He says this, dear friends, 1 Peter 4:12-13. Don't be surprised. We can just leave it at that. Peter's like, guys. You shouldn't be surprised at this. Don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. How many of us have felt that? Why is this happening to me? I'm a good dude.
Come on.
I'm a good person.
Come on.
I give to God. I let that dude cut me off, but I didn't show him the finger. I mean, I didn't, Come on. And we rationalize, but he says, dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal. And they were legitimately going through a fiery ordeal.
Yeah.
Many of them in this time were being burned alive by Nero. As though something strange happened, but rejoice in as much as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Don't be surprised, he says. This isn't strange. This is part of the normal Christian life, which begs to say, if this isn't part of your reality, are you really living a normal Christian life? Or are you living a pop culture, watered down Christianity of which we are surrounded?
Come on, bro.
Life isn't meant to be easy. If it is easy, you're doing it wrong. Life is meant for you to work hard at what you do. It's meant for you to try to live up to your fullest potential. It's meant to challenge you, to push you, and to fill your heart to the brim with fire until the very end. Nothing about life is easy, and victories are few and far between. And no matter how much more we might fail and succeed, our hunger is fed by the difficulties experienced, endured, and overcome. Because each shot taken is a story. Every experience has a lesson. Every shift in the weather has a little sliver of wisdom. Each uphill climb and weight carried, an upside in the end. It takes a strength to follow the harder routes. One that is matched by the strength born only from circumstances that experienced along the way. Our faith has got to be equal in this equation. You guys are familiar, I'm sure, with totally now blanking on what the law is, but a reaction requires an equal or opposite reaction. Anybody help me out? Which one? You guys can throw me under the buses. It's not thermodynamics. It's something completely different. Cause and effect, right? Right? Everything that happens, there's a reaction that is equal to it, right? Our faith has to have that same determination.
Come on, bro.
Easy doesn't fill the world with disciples. Easy doesn't plant a church in Fresno. Easy doesn't feed our souls. Easy doesn't make anything memorable. Easy doesn't do much at all. Simply put, easy doesn't. I have 3 points for us this morning. Turning to the book of James, James chapter 1.
Come on.
James chapter 1, starting here in verse 2. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. You know, sometimes God is more concerned with our character than our comfort. Sometimes we can see this process as God acting directly to discipline us and to train us. Right? Revelation 3:19, those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later, however, it produces the harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it, as the writer of Hebrews says in 12:10-11. There is a training that comes from the discipline of God, but discipline is never easy. And easy doesn't cause us to grow, which is my first point.
Wow.
Easy doesn't cause us to grow.
Let's go.
Come on, Eric.
You know, Larry has one of the best gardens that I've seen
Oh,
in my
my
life.
God.
We were over there, we had, I think just about everything in the salad was completely homemade.
Yeah.
And,
Come on.
but, yeah.
Come on.
And he was saying something about the heat, you know what I mean? And then Johnny kind of mentioned the heat. I knew to expect it. It's been hot in Pleasant Hill too. But he was saying like, oh, well, 108, it's not, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. That's not that big a deal. They just they grab the heat. These beautiful little tomatoes just grab the heat and suck them right on in and use that as fuel to grow.
That's cool.
That's right.
Wow.
Parallel.
Easy doesn't cause us to grow.
Wow.
At other times we can see it as God allowing adversity and using it to build our character. We all know, and maybe you don't, but let me remind you, God is sovereign over all things. He either allows it to happen or is directly influenced in causing it to happen, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Now, that can either strengthen your faith or that can blow your faith out of the water, depending on your view of who God is.
Yeah.
Because if God is good, then his power is only done in good. But if your God is bad, then everything he does is with wrong motives.
Yeah.
That's not really the point and purpose of this sermon, but I think it begs the question to go and wrestle with. I believe, and the Bible's clear, that God is a good God. He is a good Father. He is a loving, benevolent deity that wants only our good. That means everything that he does or everything he allows to be done is for our good. That means even when there's tough times, in these times of adversity, there's a point to it.
Come on.
James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters. First of all, pure joy, not just joy. Like, hey guys, I know it's tough. Just gut it out. It's only temporary. That's not what he says. James is like, consider it absolute, pure, clean joy.
That's incredible.
Whenever, not like the couple times that it hurts, whenever you face trials. Of many kinds. Like, what? Can you give me a break, dude? Because the people that he's preaching to here and writing to have a deep conviction that the testing of their faith has something that it's producing, and that's perseverance. But he says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. Now, this word let then says you have a choice in the matter. You can either not let it and suffer the consequences, or you can let it and suffer the consequences. Consequences is a neutral word. It can be bad consequences or good consequences, one way or the other. And I think it's totally the Holy Spirit here. Paul gives us some great insight into the same passage. If you go over to Romans chapter 5.
What's up, bro?
Romans chapter 5. Verse 1. Paul and James are kindred spirits in this. Romans chapter 5, verse 1 says, therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God our Father, or through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our what? Sufferings? Are you kidding me? Paul and James are unified and we have pure joy whenever we face trials of many kinds. Glory in suffering seems like an oxymoron. I don't know. They cancel each other out. We can just cut this out. No, he says, not only so, we also glory in our sufferings because we know there's that knowing again. We know that suffering produces the same thing,
Right.
the very same thing that James is talking about, perseverance.
Wow.
But Paul digs a layer deeper. James says, let perseverance finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Paul clarifies what it means to be mature and complete, not lacking anything, because he says, because you know that suffering produces perseverance. What does perseverance create? Character. Character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who he has given. Becoming a disciple and getting our sins forgiven isn't the end of the process.
Right.
It's actually just the beginning.
Right.
It's the doorway to us becoming the men and women that God had originally designed for us in Genesis 1 and 2,
Yeah.
which is perfect human beings. Now, we can't fathom perfect human beings because none of us are perfect human beings because of the fall. That wasn't God's original intention.
Yeah.
God's original intention was that we would be perfect, in perfect unity and harmony with him, with one another, with nature, etc. That's what it was. Now let me ask you a question. What's the difference between suffering and perseverance? Think about it for a second. If you needed to persevere through something, does that mean the suffering goes away? No. The only reason why you're persevering is because you're still suffering. The only difference is a mindset shift.
Yeah.
Right.
Flip over to Romans 12.
Come on, babe.
Come on. This is good, bro.
You might see I'm not flipping over there. It's because I have them written down here in much bigger text, and I can see them from this far. Otherwise, you would be seeing them. But know that you can read them on your own, and I'm not going to.
I'm okay.
God wants to change our character, but he does that through us persevering, which really isn't a change of our behavior as much as it's a change of our mindset. Romans 12, verse 1, it says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your behavior. No. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to attest and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will.
Wow.
If I'm going through suffering and I understand the sovereignty of God and I have a good view of God, then I can persevere through that suffering, knowing that God in the end has a plan and a purpose to it that is going to help me be more of who God wants me to be.
Come on.
That is not a behavior shift. That is a mindset shift.
Yeah.
Wow. Come on, babe.
Because our world teaches us the exact opposite.
Yeah.
That God is a crutch. You need God because you don't have the guts. You don't have the courage. You don't have what it takes to make it in this life. So you need Jesus to be your crutch.
Right.
Garbage.
Come on, Eric.
I will tell you, put my life up against anybody else's life who thinks that, my life is more difficult.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, Eric. I would say so. Come on, bro.
Because I'm not just worried about my behavior. My character is what God has transformed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that other people, I'm not arrogant enough to say that other people have had like less, that my life has somehow been bad. It hasn't, actually. When I look at the grand scheme of things, I've lived a really great life. Very easy in the grand scheme of things. A lot of other people have lived much more difficult situations and circumstances than I have. But the person who chooses to say that religion is a crutch, that God is a crutch, obviously has gone through some things, and their religion, their God, has not helped them through it. And I think that we live in a situation in society where that's true.
Come on, Eric.
The Greek word for transform is metamorpho, which we can understand from metamorphosis as some etymology there. It speaks of a total and complete transformation, like that of a caterpillar into a butterfly. As I understand it, In the chrysalis, the caterpillar, including all of its internal organs, is dissolved and completely changed into a new creature that has completely different DNA. It is not the same animal.
Yeah.
It is a completely separate insect at the very core of its being. This is what God does to us. This is what he's trying to do in us. Ephesians 4:22 through 23 and Colossians 3:9 says, put off your old self and to put on your new self. Put to death what belongs to your earthly nature. Colossians 3 verse 5. Paul wrote, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Galatians 2 verse 20. We cannot expect that dying to the old self will be easy. It's going to require some pain. The goal of this transformation is nothing less than us being like God. Not being God, I want to make that important distinction, but being like him. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. We are to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Ephesians 4:24 says. The new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Colossians 3:10. We can participate in the divine nature, Peter says in 2 Peter 1, verse 4. We cannot expect to achieve such a tremendous goal without much effort and struggle. In fact, and I'm sure that, insert another part of the chrysalis to butterfly analogy here. We've all probably on some level in high school or junior high watched some video or something about that process. If that struggle, if the scientist cuts the chrysalis even a little bit to help that butterfly out, even though it might come out looking magnificent, it will not survive.
Yeah.
It has to go through the struggle in order to survive. We're no different. The process by which God produces a changed character is not easy. It has been described in various ways. It may be compared to a sculptor who chips away at wood or stone with hard instruments until he achieves the result he seeks. Sometimes when we first become Christians, we can feel like the sculptor has got a jackhammer. And he's like, bah, 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 big chunks are falling out. Big chunks are falling out. And it can be scary and hurt the man, and that's painful. But then later on, he comes in with a fine chisel, doing a little tiny refine. And then he comes in with some sandpaper. Just rub you a little bit the wrong way, but I understand what that person's getting at. God did. This is the process of building character. It may be compared to a jeweler who's cutting and polishing until that gem is just super fine, reflecting the light oh so perfect. Or a very hot refiner's fire, which brings all the impurities in the molten metal to the surface so that they can be removed, so that you can have silver or gold or precious metals. Jesus compared it to a vine dresser who prunes sharply so that the vines will bear more fruit in John 12:15. God uses testing and difficulty to develop strength and maturity in his people. The process is seldom easy or pleasant, but the results are worth it. Which leads to my second point. Easy doesn't teach us to fight.
Come on, brother.
Because why? We have to fight for this. We have to fight to maintain the right perspective about suffering in our life, about going through hardships. Back to James chapter 1. Look here in verse 13. James chapter 1, verse 13. When tempted, no one should say God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. God usually doesn't take the trouble away, even though we ask him to. Anybody ever had that experience where you pray and bam, it's gone? I have not.
Magic.
I remember one time, we were living in Alaska, and Akaya was just born, and I remember we went out to sidebar. We went out to a camping trip with our entire church. This was a few weeks ago, and some couples from the Sacramento church came down, and they had a newborn baby. And every time I see a newborn baby, I hear a newborn baby cry. I'm just like, I can handle the newborn baby crying.
Yeah.
Like it's before they got their lungs.
Yeah.
It's almost soothing to some degree. Moms are like, are you serious? That's right, because you didn't have to do a doggone thing. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Okay, I'll just admit. Okay. But as soon as they get their lungs, man, it is over because now it's just like nails on a chalkboard. It's just And so I remember Kaya had gotten her lungs, and mom was gone. Maybe it was a women's midweek or something like that, or a Bible study or something. I don't remember what it was. But like she just wouldn't stop crying. She was changed. She was fed. She was all these. I just could not get her to stop crying. And I'm like, and again, those of us that are parents, we understand this. It's like I don't know what to do, right? And so I just like sadly, the last thing that I thought about was let me pray. How about pray first and then feed her, or pray first and then change her diaper, whatever. But I prayed, I'm like, God, just I prayed for her to just be calm and chill, or at least God to give me the insight into what she needed. Bam! Literally, immediately stopped crying.
Whoa.
It freaked me out.
Wow.
Because I wasn't expecting that. It just shows where my faith was at the time. You know what I mean? But God rarely takes the trouble away. And just as we just saw, the reason why He doesn't take the trouble away is because He wants us to learn to persevere through it so that we can grow in our character. We can often put the blame on Him for allowing us, or even Him causing us to grow through things in our lives, especially when we struggle with sin. Proverbs 19 verse 3 says, a person's own folly leads to their ruin,
Right.
yet their heart rages against the Lord. How many people do we know, and I won't say how many times have we had this mentality because I don't want to throw you guys under the bus, but I can guarantee you I've been there. How many people do we know are so ticked off at God and Christians and Christianity when really they're just the ones that have made really dumb decisions in life? It says a person's own folly leads to their ruin. They did it. You did it. It's not God's fault.
Right. Right. It's true.
Job 36, and then what happens? Job 36 verse 21 says, beware of turning to evil, which you seem to prefer to affliction. Translation, you decide to turn to evil and to sin when things are hard.
Yep.
Often when we struggle with sin, we turn to evil. In fact, this is the very reason why we need to learn to fight.
Yeah. Sure.
For most of our lives, before we became disciples, we choose to medicate in order to cope with the hardships and suffering in our lives.
Yeah.
Instead of persevering through our suffering, we stunted our growth, and this caused us to be weak in our characters, and now because we never learned how to fight. There are parts of me, let me just be real, there are parts of me that are literally 13 years old.
Come on.
Talk to my wife for sure.
Okay.
Talk to my kids. There are certain times when things get hard that I go to a 13-year-old boy and not the 43-year-old man that stands before you today.
Right.
I don't make decisions like a 43-year-old man. I make decisions like a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Why? Because at some point in that particular area, in that particular place of suffering, I chose to medicate. I chose to go to sin instead of suffering through it, persevering through it, and building the character necessary for me to stand here and make an adult decision when I'm making a kid decision.
Come on.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Come on, babe.
That's awesome, bro.
In our struggle with sin, we also must persevere and build character to fight, because easy doesn't teach us to fight.
Come on.
Again, God doesn't typically take the temptation or the struggle away, but He does help us
Come on.
to deal with it.
Yeah.
God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Psalm 46, 1 through 2.
I like that.
Rather than take away the trouble, he enables us to keep going when we are in the trouble. When we are in the valley of the shadow of death, he is with us. Psalm 23, verse 4. It's not when you're before and then after the valley of the shadow of death. Once you're out of it, he's with you. No, I will be with you, he says.
That's right.
Come on.
Psalm 138, verse 7 says, though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life.
Wow.
God has said, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah 43, verse 2. These words of God are true in the Old Testament, but they're just as true in the New Testament. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Go ahead and turn there.
This is good, man. You becoming.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. The Bible says, no temptation is overtaken you, except what is common to mankind. You know, a lot of times we can walk around and feel like, man, I'm the only one that struggles with it. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows my pain. Yeah, we can think that somehow we've got the corner on the market of our drama in our life. No, we're not the only one. Now that's super comforting because there's somebody else out there that's feeling what I'm feeling right now.
Awesome, bro. Come on.
What does he say? No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Now let me stop here for a second because the religious world has hijacked this passage.
Yes.
Come on, Eric.
Listen to Caleb. I love Caleb personally. Listen to Caleb. God won't let you go through what you can't endure. Garbage.
That's right.
What does it say? He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Not that he will not allow you to go through things that you can't bear. Otherwise, why am I even preaching the sermon on suffering and perseverance?
Right.
It just negates all the passages that I just got through saying.
Come on.
So it's not that God's not going to allow you to go through things beyond your ability to endure. No, he was going to push you to the other brink so that you will rely on him.
Come on.
Amen.
A casual reading of Paul's life, you go, this passage doesn't mean what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Casual reading.
Come on, dude.
He says, no temptation is overtaking you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so you can endure it.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Endure sounds a lot like perseverance. God allows us to go through difficulty so that we rely on him and not on our own strength, as Paul learned and wrote about. 2 Corinthians chapter 1. I want you to look at this.
Come on, brother.
2 Corinthians chapter 1. Look here in verse 8.
1-8.
1:8.
Okay.
Oh, bro.
This is hilarious.
Come on, Eric. This is awesome.
It says, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure. Wait a second. God won't allow you to go through more than what you can endure, but yet Paul's the exception to this rule? Is that what I'm hearing from the religious world?
Right. Come on.
We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. I love what Enrico said when he was up here. It's like, I thought about suicide.
Yeah.
My life is meaningless. My life has absolutely no meaning. Is this all that there is? In that moment, this is where he was at. I can't do this anymore. What's the point? It says, indeed, we felt as if we have received the sentence of death. But this happens. Another way to say this is, but God allowed this to happen that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope, and he will continue to deliver us as you help us by your prayers. Then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor God granted us in answer to your prayers.
Yes.
Why? Why does God want us to grow? Why do we need to learn how to fight?
Come on, bro.
Why do we need to build our character? Because God has chosen us to be those who change the world. Easy doesn't change the world.
Okay.
Final point. Easy doesn't change the world.
Come on.
You know, the world will never, ever be changed by weak men and women who fold at the first sign of trouble, or who blame shifts, or who choose to medicate in whatever their medication is, drugs, alcohol, pornography, masturbation, work, whatever, pick your poison. Everything can become a vice if it's used improperly. When there was a while back, I was in an airport. And, you know, if you go to the airport, you got CNN up there and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I don't remember what it was, I think it was in Turkey, there was a news report of a shooter, an active shooter situation that had happened in an airport in Turkey. And it's got that grainy CCTV, you know what I mean? And if you can visualize an airport, right, you've got a big bank of chairs on one side, a big bank of chairs on this other side, and a big corridor in the middle where people are walking typically, right? And here he is in the middle with a handgun, just going blah, 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 blah. And my thought process was like, man, like, why isn't anybody doing something? Like, where are the men who are going to like run at this guy and like stop him?
Right.
And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know, kind of, I don't know if you guys, you know, visualize this, like, you know, I was kind of like, okay, well, and I put myself into the scene, and I'm like, okay, well, if I was over here, he's shooting over here, I was like, move over and kind of hide and duck behind some of these chairs, and then I just run at him and tap him. You know? Just living out maybe a fantasy or something like that, you know what I mean? Like trying to, but in my heart of hearts, I'm like, why isn't anybody doing something? It's just one dude. It's just one person. And yet, I made a decision in that moment because the thought came from not why isn't anybody doing anything, but Eric, if you were there, would you do something? And I thought, yeah, I would. And then I thought, oh, would you? And then, even though my desire was yes, the next question invariably came up, could you?
Wow.
Could you? Physically. At the time, I was about 25 pounds overweight, no physical stamina to speak of whatsoever. And I'm sure that adrenaline could get me somewhat of the way, but I had no fighting skills, no nothing. And so, you guys remember the movie Zorro from back in the day?
Yes.
Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas, right?
Yeah.
What does he say to the guy? You would have fought bravely and died quickly. That's what he said. That would have been me. I would have fought bravely and died quickly. But I made a decision in that moment because I want to be the man that runs to the sound of the gun. That's who I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be the man that runs into the burning building.
Yeah.
I want to be the man that when there is a need, I go, not run away from it.
Yeah.
When somebody is helpless, when there's a situation, you know, speaking of 9/11 just a few moments ago, right? Like, I want to be part of that group that rushes the terrorists on the plane.
Yeah.
But how much of us would be willing to do that spiritually?
Wow.
Because just outside these walls, just outside these doors are men and women who are being shot spiritually, who are in burning buildings of their lives,
Wow.
Yeah.
who are in situations that God has called us to be the men and women who have the character and the strength to fight, not just so that we can build that character and that strength, so that we can be the men and women that run to the sound of the gun, but that we can also help them to get away from that situation.
Come on, bro.
Now, subsequently, I started going to the gym.
Come on, let's go, Gabe.
And not just any gym, I started going to UFC gym.
Wow.
and we spent some money on some personal training. I'm happy to say that I'm down about 15 pounds from the beginning of the year.
Let's go.
And I'm closer to learning how to fight.
Nice. Come on, bro. Come on.
World changers are those who run to the sound of the gospel. Those of you who are here and those that are coming, who have come every week, are running to the sound of the gunshots that are being heard here in Frisco. Everybody who comes here. The world is never changed by weak men and women who fold at the first sign of trouble, who cower in the face of trouble, who, when the going gets tough, run away. James 1, verse 16. Let's close out here.
Come on, babe.
This is good.
Come on, brother.
Don't be deceived, James says, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. I love this imagery. He chose to give us birth so that we can be the first fruits of all his creation. Now, this got me thinking about this phrase, first fruits, and what it means. First fruits were the first harvest of the crops back in the Old Testament. Well, back in those days. Still is, right?
Yeah.
Right? Larry gets first fruits from his crops, you know what I mean?
Come on.
Yeah, avocado first fruits right there.
Nobody likes them.
There it is. Yeah. The firstborn of their livestock and herds are also considered first fruits in biblical times. Basically, the first and the best are the first fruits. We talk about this a lot during contribution. We're talking about special missions. We're talking about contribution. But in reality, for us, this actually means something quite a bit different. Paul loves this phrase, and I've already said that James and Paul kind of kindred spirits here. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Let's take a look at this.
Come on.
We know that Paul and James, again, already have a lot of similarities in their thought process. So 1 Corinthians 15, look at verse 20. The Bible says, but Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes through a man. For as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive. But each in turn, Christ, the first fruits, then when he comes, those who belong to him. What Paul is saying here is that Jesus was a first fruit of those who had fallen asleep. When he died and was buried, but as we celebrated at Easter just a few short months ago, honestly, and as the context of this passage lays out, Jesus rose from the dead and became not just the first fruits of those who've fallen asleep, but those who will be made alive. He's talking about us. He's talking about the church.
Right.
He's talking about disciples. In Romans 16, verse 5, in the King James Version, Paul calls out his dear friend Epaenetus, who was the first convert in the province of Asia. Later, in 1 Corinthians 16:15, also in the New King James, the household of Stephanas is considered the first fruits in Achaia. And that's the phrase that Paul uses, first fruits. So what he's saying then is that first fruits isn't just about contribution. It's not just about giving our tithes and offerings, or in the olden days, in the Old Testament period, giving the first of our livestock, or devoting the first, born son to, God's temple, or et cetera, et cetera. But actually, when it comes to New Testament times, it's the first converts to Christianity in that particular city. So Epaenetus was the first convert in the province of Asia. The first person that said yes to a relationship with God and was baptized into Christ was in the province of Asia was Epaenetus. And in Achaia, the whole household of Stephanus were the first converts that Paul was able to reach out to and baptize there in Achaia. The apostles spent 3 years with Jesus, building their characters, learning how to fight their battles so that they could do one thing and one thing only, and that was change this world.
Come on.
And that's the same call for each and every one of us today.
Let's go, bro.
You know what I find really cool? Is that we've got the Fresno 5.
Let's go.
No, the Fresno 5. There are 5 disciples in Fresno.
Woo!
Yeah. You are the first fruits in Fresno.
Yeah.
The first fruits in Fresno. Think about this. A church will be planted whenever it gets planted, whenever God decides. But everybody is going to talk about for generations and generations and generations to come about the Fresno 5. For what? The first fruits in the city of Fresno.
Wow.
Everybody's going to talk about it.
Come on, Lee. Come on.
There will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in this. Now look at this. First fruits.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of disciples in this city.
Yep.
The Fresno 5 will always be the first fruits.
That's right. Let's go.
Can you believe that? Go to Acts chapter 5.
Come on.
The only way for this to happen is for you and I to be men and women who in the face of suffering, who in the face of trial, consider it absolute pure joy.
Wow.
And let God build our characters. Let God teach us how to grow. So that why? So that we can now have the character and the perseverance to grit under fire and learn how to fight so that we can actually be not just the only fruits, but the first fruits of many, many, many more. As it says, but in turn, Christ, the first fruits, then when he comes, those who belong to him. How many more people in this city belong to him that need to become first fruits and second fruits and third fruits and fourth fruits and 500 fruits? Acts chapter 5, as we close out, verse 17.
Come on, bro.
Then the high priest and all his associates, who were members of the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles and put them in public jail. But during the night, an angel Lord opened the door of the jail and brought them out. Go stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people all about this new life. At daybreak, they entered the temple courts, and as they had been told, they began to teach the people. The apostles had been arrested. They had been flogged, if you go back to the story, which means beaten half to death. Not even half to death, beaten to the point of death. And what were they doing in prison? Sinning. And what happened? And the angel Lord comes and just opens the door and says, hey, go back and do what you were just doing. Whoa. What got us put in jail and beat? You want us to do that again? Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right, let's go.
Oh, man.
Let's go do it. The only way to change this world is for all of us to become first fruits, to transform and grow in our characters, to learn how to fight the good fight of faith and bring the message of this new life to those who have fallen asleep, the walking dead of this world. Nothing about life is easy. And victories can seem few and far between. No matter how much more we might fail and succeed, as disciples, our hunger is fed by the difficulties experienced, endured, and overcome. Because each battle creates a story. Every experience has a lesson. Every trouble and challenge has a silver lining of wisdom, if we choose to be trained by it. Each uphill climb and weight carried has an upside in the end. It takes strength to follow the harder route, the narrow road. One that is matched by the strength born from experiences along the way. Our faith has got to be equal in this equation. Because when we want to bring home our friends, when we want to bring home our families, or even just our stories, easy doesn't feed our souls. Easy doesn't help us grow. Easy doesn't teach us to fight. Easy doesn't change the world by filling it with disciples. Easy doesn't make anything memorable or make us want to live a life worth living. Easy doesn't do much at all. Simply put, easy doesn't. I love you all very, very much.
Wow.